Welcome back to True Crime Documentary YouTube channel. In the sprawling city of Dallas, a place where business meetings, family gatherings, and dreams of success filled the air, lived Jordan Carter, a 42-year-old pastor at New Life Church. To the people in his congregation, Jordan was a symbol of unwavering faith, love, and moral integrity. His words could move mountains, stirring the souls of his listeners with his deeply heartfelt sermons. Each Sunday, he stood at the pulpit, preaching not only the Word of God, but also the importance of family, loyalty, and unwavering devotion to one's commitments. His congregation revered him as a man of God, a leader, and a counselor. Jordan was more than just a pastor. He was a leader, a father, a friend. His reputation was flawless, and he had spent over a decade cultivating his role in the community. His family life, too, seemed just as perfect. He had been married to Lillian, his 40-year-old wife, for 18 years. Together, they had a teenage son, Tyler, who was 16 years old, and the epitome of charm and ambition. Tyler was the apple of his parents' eyes, a bright student with dreams of attending a prestigious university. To the outside world, the Carters were the definition of a perfect family, united, successful, and spiritually devoted. Lillian was every bit as dedicated as Jordan. As a supportive and elegant woman, she stood beside her husband not just as a partner in marriage, but as a pillar of strength within the church. She had given up a successful teaching career to stay home and raise their son, pouring her heart into the church and their family life. Yet, no one knew the silent storm brewing beneath the surface. Despite the image they portrayed to the world, Jordan's life was far more complicated than it appeared. Behind his facade of unwavering devotion to his family, a dangerous secret had begun to take root, and this secret, as all secrets do, threatened to destroy everything he had built. The catalyst for the breakdown of everything came from an unexpected source: Martha Davis, Lillian's 60-year-old mother. Martha had always been a fixture in the Carter family's life. A widow, she lived just 15 minutes away from their home. Though Lillian was the daughter who had grown up in the house, it was clear to everyone that Martha still had a powerful influence on the family dynamic. As an older, wiser woman, she had provided comfort and guidance to both Lillian and Jordan throughout their marriage. She was always there, whether it was lending a hand with family dinners, offering advice, or simply being a loving grandmother to Tyler. But as the years passed, something shifted. The warmth Jordan once felt for Martha began to evolve into something more complicated. At first, he brushed it off as nothing, just a passing thought, an innocent exchange. After all, Martha had been in his life for so long, and the affection they shared was purely familial, wasn't it? But the more he interacted with her, the more Jordan realized that his feelings were changing. What had once been a simple, respectful connection between a son-in-law and his mother-in-law began to blur into something dangerous, something forbidden. Martha, in her mid-50s at the time, was aware of her allure. She had always been a charismatic woman, and as she aged, her self-assuredness grew. She had a way of captivating attention, not only with her words, but with her presence, and she knew exactly how to use it to her advantage. Soon, their interactions began to feel more intimate than they ever had before. The conversations became longer, the exchanges more personal. There were lingering touches, stolen glances, and moments that seemed to carry more weight than they should have. Jordan tried to resist, but with each passing day, he found it harder and harder to maintain his boundaries. What began as innocent conversations grew into something darker, something that neither of them could control. Martha's attentions were no longer subtle. She made it clear that she wanted Jordan, not just as a son-in-law, but as something more. And Jordan, despite his guilt, found himself unable to pull away. The more time they spent together, the more the line between right and wrong became blurred. Jordan had spent his entire life preaching against infidelity, yet here he was, involved in a relationship that threatened to destroy his marriage, his family, and his ministry. And still, he couldn't stop himself. The affair became their secret, a forbidden bond that they both knew could not be exposed. And yet, the secrecy made it all the more intoxicating. Martha's presence became something Jordan couldn't live without, and the guilt that gnawed at him only seemed to add fuel to the fire. As the affair deepened, the cracks in Jordan's life began to grow more visible. Lillian, ever the perceptive woman, began to notice subtle changes in her husband. He was more distant, more preoccupied. The late nights at the church became more frequent, and there were times when he came home late, distracted and disconnected. The warmth he had once shown her, the tenderness that had marked their marriage, seemed to be slipping away. At first, Lillian chalked it up to stress. After all, Jordan was the pastor of a growing church, and there were always more people to counsel, more responsibilities to manage. But as time went on, something in her gut told her that there was more to it. She had known Jordan for too long not to recognize when something was wrong. Her suspicions were confirmed when she began noticing small but telling signs. Jordan's phone was always face down when he was around her. There were hushed conversations late at night, and when she asked him who he was talking to, he always seemed to become defensive. The affectionate gestures he had once given her, small touches, kind words, had started to fade. Their conversations, once so full of laughter and connection, now seemed strained, disconnected, and the distance between them grew, slowly but surely. Lillian's intuition told her the truth, even if she couldn't bring herself to say it aloud. She didn't want to confront him, didn't want to believe that the man she had loved for so long could betray her in such a way. But she could feel the growing distance between them, the silence that had begun to speak louder than words. It wasn't until one evening that her suspicions came to a head. Lillian had returned home early from a church event, expecting to find Jordan at the office, finishing up some last-minute work. But as she walked into the house, she heard his voice coming from the living room. The tone was different, strained, hurried. He was speaking to someone, but the words were too muffled for her to understand. Her heart began to race as she moved closer to the source of the sound. The closer she got, the more she could feel the tension in the air. Something was wrong, and the closer she came, the worse it felt. When Jordan heard her footsteps, he quickly ended the conversation. His face flushed with guilt as he turned to look at her. "I didn't hear you come in," Jordan said, his voice shaking. He was clearly caught off guard, but the guilt in his eyes was unmistakable. Lillian didn't respond at first. She just stood there, staring at him. The silence between them was heavy, thick with unspoken words. She could see it in his eyes. The truth. The man she loved, the man she had trusted, was hiding something from her. "Who were you talking to?" Lillian finally asked, her voice trembling. She needed to know the truth. Jordan hesitated. His mind raced, looking for a way out, but there was none. He couldn't lie anymore. The secret was out, and there was no going back. I was talking to Martha," Jordan whispered, his voice barely audible. Lillian's heart stopped. The words hit her like a physical blow. She staggered back, unable to process what she had just heard. The woman she had trusted most in her life, her own mother, was the person Jordan had been hiding from her. Her mind reeled as the truth set in. Martha, her own mother, had destroyed everything they had built. The betrayal was too much for Lillian to handle. The pain was overwhelming, suffocating. In the days that followed, Lillian could barely speak to Jordan. She couldn't look at him without feeling the weight of the betrayal. The man she had married, the man she had trusted with her life, had shattered everything. He had broken their marriage, destroyed their family, and betrayed her in the worst possible way. Lillian left their home, unable to bear the sight of Jordan. The weight of the betrayal was too much to carry. She didn't know how to fix it. She didn't know if it could be fixed. Every word they exchanged felt hollow, meaningless. The trust was gone. The love was gone. She could no longer see the man she had married. Instead, she saw a stranger, someone she didn't recognize. Jordan, left alone in the silence of their home, was consumed by guilt. The weight of his actions was unbearable. The affair had started as a moment of weakness, a forbidden desire that he had justified as something necessary, something to fill the void in his life. But now, he realized, the consequences of his actions had shattered everything. The guilt consumed him, and he couldn't escape it. But Martha was still there, still demanding more from him. She had pushed him to leave Lillian, to start a new life with her. The pressure was unbearable, and the constant tug-of-war between the woman he had promised to love and the woman he had betrayed everything for was tearing him apart. One night, in a moment of blind rage, the situation reached its breaking point. In the heat of an argument, Jordan grabbed a nearby lamp, swinging it at Martha with all his pent-up frustration. The impact was sickening. Martha fell to the floor, her body lifeless. The silence that followed was deafening. Jordan stood there, trembling, as the weight of what he had just done crashed over him. He had killed her. He had taken the life of the woman who had caused the destruction of his own. The murder of Martha sent shockwaves through Dallas. The investigation into her death quickly escalated, and Jordan was immediately named the prime suspect. The community was in shock. The beloved pastor, the man who had led them with love and integrity, was now the subject of a murder investigation. Jordan, unable to face the consequences of his actions, fled. The media frenzy grew, and the public outcry was deafening. How could the man they had trusted so deeply be capable of such a heinous crime? When Jordan was finally apprehended, he was a broken man. His once pristine image had been shattered beyond repair. The trial was a spectacle, one that captivated the entire city. Jordan was charged with first-degree murder, and the courtroom was packed with spectators, journalists, and members of his former congregation, all eager to see how this tragedy would unfold. The trial lasted for weeks, with both the prosecution and defense presenting compelling arguments. The prosecution painted Jordan as a man driven by guilt and a desperate need to protect his secrets, arguing that the murder had been premeditated. The defense, however, claimed that Jordan had acted in a moment of rage, overwhelmed by the betrayal of both Martha and Lillian. In the end, Jordan was convicted of first-degree murder, and his once promising future was destroyed. He had lost everything: the love of his wife, the respect of his congregation, and the life he had worked so hard to build. Jordan Carter's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of living a lie. His rise to power, his fall from grace, and the devastating consequences of his actions were a sobering reminder that secrets, no matter how well hidden, always come to light. He had sacrificed everything: his family, his reputation, his ministry, for a brief moment of forbidden desire, and in the end, it cost him everything. The community that had once adored him could never look at him the same way again. In the aftermath, Lillian was left to rebuild her life, to pick up the shattered pieces of her family. Tyler, too, had to come to terms with the fact that the man he had looked up to as a father was now a murderer, and the once thriving church, once a place of hope and love, would never be the same. The tragedy of Jordan Carter would haunt them all for years to come. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Be sure to check out our other videos for more captivating stories. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.